Here you have the sample final project. Let's go to the first portion. Notice introduction. Notice the introduction is broken up into focus, population, research questions. Why do I do this? Well, because if you look at the Module 1 rubric, the Milestone 1 rubric, guidelines and rubric document, it tells you what 3 things to address. Focus, population, research questions. So let's go back to the sample final project. Here in the right hand side in the comments area, in black, I give you certain tips, hints, tendencies that I've seen students do so that you don't do them. And in blue, you find the prompt from the Milestone Guidelines and Rubric document. Now, this is, I'll let you go, you'll want to go through this on your own. But then we have the analysis portion. This is the Milestone 2 portion. When you turn in Milestone 2, you should turn in Milestone 1, and then to that you add the analysis portion. And again, this is directly from the instructions. Using your work from Milestone 1, you will now add a draft of the second section of your report. So basically what you're doing is you're creating or you're writing your final project in 3 steps. The first step is the introduction portion. The second step is the introduction portion plus the analysis portion. Now you might say, well, why do I have to resubmit it? Because if there was any comments on your first milestone, you need to address those comments and make those changes. For the final project, you're asked to be not just proficient, but exemplary. So even if you got a perfect score on milestone 1, look for comments in the rubric that ask you to make certain changes. Sometimes that gets lost. So let's go back to the sample final project. Here again, here's the 3 sections from the rubric for the introduction, and here's the 3 sections from the analysis portion of your final project, aka the 3 bullet points from the Milestone 2 prompt. For example, research methods, outcomes, and conclusions. So let's go to that section now. Research methods, here in blue are the questions you're supposed to answer, and then you can see how I answer them here. This is the one I want to talk to you more about, outcomes. Here's what the prompt says. Examine the outcomes of those tests. What were the major findings? i.e., did they reject or fail to reject the hypothesis, and why? Were the findings statistically significant? i.e., what was the p-value? I completely understand, even if you're a student who pretty much gets your research article, even if you're a student who completely gets this p-value business as it appears in the textbook, I get why you wouldn't quite know what to do with the p-values from your article. I 100% get that. Basically, just so you know, a big p-value means nothing to see here. Maybe there's no statistically significant correlation or observation. For example, you have 2 different groups, right, in a study. One group does a little more or scores a little higher on something than the other group. Now, does this mean that it's because of A or B or C that they were testing? Or does it just mean that one group's going to be slightly different than another group? See, the p-value encapsulates that. If you have a big p-value, you say, okay, whatever difference or whatever correlation was observed, this was probably due to chance. This isn't statistically significant. But if your p-value is small, you would say, well, there's something going on here. There's a statistically significant relationship, correlation, difference. Whatever the statement is, a small p-value that goes along with it, the smaller, the better. It means that there's something going on here. This is statistically significant. Now, what's little? If you read this article, one of the paragraphs is basically a cheat sheet. It says if the p-value is below this number, we say it's borderline statistically significant. If the p-value is below this number, we say that it's statistically significant. If the p-value is below this number, we say that it is highly statistically significant. So I'm not looking for more than that from you. You don't need to worry too much about what's under the hood and bells and whistles and all this. You don't need to sound super mathy or super stats. You just say, look at this p-value. Because this p-value happens to be bigger than a certain number, it's not statistically significant. Or you say, look at this p-value. Because it's little, in particular less than some value, then you can say it's statistically significant, borderline statistically significant, or highly statistically significant. And again, if you click on this article that I have here for you, there's a paragraph that basically gives you that cheat sheet. That's all I'm looking for personally for this part of the assignment. And that is it. So at the end of this is the milestone 3 portion. At the end of milestone 3, your final project should pretty much be done. So in my feedback, I might reiterate, take a closer look at this, because I gave you full credit or you lost credit, so you want to fix it. So why should you look at something if you got full credit? It could be that it's full credit in terms of proficient, but it's not exemplary. So if I tell you to do something in the feedback, you'll want to make sure to make those adjustments so that you can get a perfect score on the final project. Again, a perfect score on milestone 3 does not necessarily mean that you're going to get a perfect score on the final project without any changes. Again, the reason is the milestones are set at proficient, whereas the final project you're expected to be exemplary. But for some of you, at the end of milestone 3, read the feedback. I tell you, this is not only is this full credit for your 3rd milestone, I think this is full credit for your final project. In that case, you will be done.